It is 7:01 and we are starting. Okay, I move that we approve the October minutes. Second,
Do we have a second?
Second.
All
any
right.
discussion?
All right. Well, let's, with no discussion, should we, is anybody
No.
opposed?
Okay, those
Okay,
are
with no
October's done.
discussion. Yeah.
Okay, I move that the September minutes are also approved. Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All right.
Any discussion? Anybody disapprove them?
With no disapprovals, I guess both sets of minutes are approved, and then we can get them posted soon. That would be great.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue.
Okay, we'll work with our staff person on that.
Right.
But anyway, with that, that business has passed. Cynthia, do you want to start us out for the meeting as and introductions, and then we can kind of move into our other parts of our agenda?
Sure. My name is Cynthia Palmer. I'm the chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. This is a Bicycle Advisory Committee and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And Eric Goodman, who was just speaking, is the chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Welcome to our November 2024 meeting, and thank you so much for coming the night before a big election. We like to start out these meetings by introducing ourselves, saying our names, and maybe where we're from, and answering an introductory question. So tonight's question will be, what transportation infrastructure or services do you rely on the most, or would you miss if they disappeared? I'll start first. My name is Cynthia Palmer, and I will list quickly three that come to mind. One, I would miss traffic signals that recognize bicycles. We need more such traffic signals, but I am certainly reliant on the ones that we have. Two, I would miss the 18th Street underpass under Route 1. And three, I would miss the W&OD trail and any other routes that get us away from highways. So often our bicycle corridors are right next to major highways, and we breathe a very high amount of noxious air pollution. And so I would only miss the routes that are far from the highways. So that's me. And why don't I go through the list from top to bottom, and we'll see who else is here. The first name I see is Amber.
Hey, I'm Amber. I'm new to these meetings. So I'm a resident of the Courthouse Clarendon area for about 10 years. So what do I rely on? I rely on, and hence would miss the most, Metro Rail. I know Arlington only has like 2 distinct paths for Metro, and it's definitely less than what we need. But without Metro, I think the county's need would not be met by the other options. I think the culture, the growth would take a bad turn. And I really generally just enjoy taking Metro to get around. And without it, I would stop visiting many restaurants, businesses, and parks in the region.
Thank you. Great answer. Thank you for coming. And next we have Collier.
Whoops. Hello, everyone. I'm Collier Cook in the Ballston, Virginia Square neighborhood. The service infrastructure and/or service that I use the most is Capital Bike Share. It has been, I think, a great resource not only for the county but for the region. It's a great for a lot of folks. It's how they get started biking, and now with the advent of e-bikes, adding e-bikes to the fleet, it's really made moving around the county and the region a lot easier, and access parks that aren't particularly always well serviced by transit. So I would greatly miss Capital Bike Share if they were to go away. Thanks.
And those who were at our last meeting know that Collier has visited 790 something Capital Bike Share stations. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, it's around that number. I've visited all but 4 stations in the entire network, so that's something.
Congratulations.
Amazing.
At one point, I had visited them all, but they keep adding new stations, which is great. I look forward to not always being at 100%.
Perfect. All right. David Ansell.
Hi, I'm David Ansell. I live in the Dover Crystal neighborhood. I think I applaud anytime there's a new stretch of protected bike lane added in Arlington. And I bemoan whenever there's a missed opportunity to add a protected bike lane. So I would say I would miss protected bike lanes the most if they were taken away. And I think they're a great way to increase usage and biking infrastructure in Arlington.
Excellent. Elwin is next.
Hey everybody, my name is Alwyn Gonzalez. I'm a transportation planner with Arlington County DES, and I also serve as the staff liaison for the BAC. For me personally, I live in Northeast DC in the Edgewood neighborhood, and the piece of infrastructure I miss the most would probably be the Metropolitan Branch Trail, which links my neighborhood all the way down to Union Station in Northeast. So it's my primary way of getting north to south, running errands, going to the grocery store, walking my dog to the dog parks. There's several metro stations along the corridor as well. And for me, if I didn't have that, if that was, for whatever reason closed or taken away, I probably would leave my neighborhood as much as I do now. I'd probably just stay in my own corner of DC and not visit other businesses or visit my friends as often as I do now.
Great. Next we have Eric M.
Hi, Eric Malpelli, member of the PAC. I live along Langston Boulevard near Glebe Road. What I'll say is something I would miss. It's not something I'm relying on, but we'll be missing it soon. It's the Metro 3Y bus from East Falls Church into downtown, because it is slated for removal as part of the Metro bus consolidation, which I think has a lot of good goals and the big picture makes sense. But when the big picture that makes sense affects your particular neighborhood, it isn't always great. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I've heard someone else say just recently that they mourned the imminent loss of the 3Y bus. All right. Let's see. Eric Goodman.
Hi, I'm Eric Goodman. I'm chair, or I should say acting chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I live in the Bluemont area, and there's certainly a lot of things that I would miss, but I'm going to point to one particular item, which I think the county has done a good job of in the last few years, and that is grinding down sidewalks, corners that have sort of heaved up, but grinding them down to make them more accessible. And if that service went away, I think it would certainly make it more difficult for pedestrians and other folks to get around Arlington. So I really appreciate that item.
Thank you. Me too. Mike Hanna.
Yeah, hey everybody. Mike Hanna. I live in Arlington Heights. I think to the extent they exist and to the extent they continue to expand the Wilson and Clarendon corridors, have been great, and I kind of depend on those. And then more recently, and I didn't think it would matter as much, but sort of the green painting in certain areas, especially the one like the boxes that show where bikes are supposed to be at intersections. Actually, I think help a lot. It helps both bikes and cars kind of think about where bikes are going to be. So I really come to like those a lot, and I've sort of wondered and meaning to ask why when they repaved at Clarendon, the one at Highland and Wilson disappeared and they've never put it back. But hopefully they will. So those are the two things I depend on a lot.
Great. Jim Feaster.
Yes, Jim Feaster, a member of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I live in Ballston, and thanks for getting the vote out of the way. I'm probably going to have to leave before the meeting is over. What I would miss was all the efforts by Vision Zero in the last few years, most importantly, the pedestrian signal crossings and the markings on the streets for that. I also use the Bluemont Connector Trail to the WNOD Trail and other trails as well.
Great. Okay. And Lauren Hassel.
Hi, I'm Lauren Hassel. I work with Mary on Bike Arlington, Walk Arlington, Active Transportation. And I live in Ballston. And everyone's said things I was going to say. But recently the sidewalk grinding has been active in our neighborhood. And that's a tough job. And I agree with Vision Zero 100%. But I would say sidewalks in general. I think every time I come upon a street, there isn't one, you realize the importance of it. And then the other thing would be the hawk signals that even when there is no traffic inside, I will activate them just to let people know I'm out there. And so I know they're watching at the county level. So that's very, very helpful thing for walking, biking, and so on. So thanks for asking.
Great. Leslie T.
Hi, I'm Leslie Tierstein, transportation bicyclist, live in Penrose in South Arlington. What I would miss horribly is the ability to get my bicycle on a metro, especially now that there are no time restrictions. You could do it at any time. And also to get my bicycle on the front of a bus, because it really increases greatly the range that you can cover and where you can get to in a reasonable amount of time.
Excellent. All right. And Andrew Martin.
Hey, good evening. Andrew Martin, Bicycle Committee, Arlington Heights. Different answer to the question, but something that I do miss or regret not having been around for was kind of the trolley system that used to exist back in like until the 1940s. Being able to go from Great Falls down to Mount Vernon would have been really cool. And you can still kind of see some of the remnants of that. And if we still had it, it would have been great.
Thank you. Great answer. I yearn for those as well. Next we have Mary.
I'm Mary Delau. I'm with Bike and Walk Arlington, and I live in Bluemont. And kind of like Lauren, everybody said what I was going to say, but the one thing people haven't mentioned yet is the bike lanes on Fairfax Drive through Ballston and Virginia Square. And even though they're often blocked, they're always blocked, but I still love using them to get, if I need to get down to Roslyn or somewhere from Bluemont. I prefer that often to the Custis Trail because it's hilly. So I'm glad those lanes are there and I'd miss them.
Okay. Pam Van Hine.
Hi, Pam Van Hine, the PAC recording secretary. And I was one who suggested this topic because it was raised at the first open house for the transportation plan. It was a really great question. I agree with Cynthia that at grade Route 1 would be catastrophic. And I'm also concerned about possible changes in buses. Metro talks about changing the routes for the 23 buses, and they go down 23rd Street in my neighborhood. And they also go to Shirlington, and I rely on those a lot. I missed the 92 bus that goes down Long Bridge Drive. It's already gone. And I hope that the Art 43 bus lives on forever because it's the greatest way to get to courthouse. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick.
Good evening, Patrick Kenny. I live in the Ballston neighborhood, and what I would miss most would be the, I guess, the bike lanes and pedestrian lanes that go from basically the Ballston and even Bluemont area up to Roslyn. Without those, I think it would be very challenging to get around.
Thank you. And Randy.
Oh, we can't hear you, Randy.
Is Randy there?
He's trying.
Okay.
Do you want to move on to Aaron and then maybe come back to Randy?
Sure. Aaron, do you want to go now?
Sure. I'm Aaron Schutz. I'm in the Lion Park neighborhood. I think the infrastructure I would miss, going back to the first answer, Ambar's answer, the metro, even though I haven't been on it for about 5 years, it's really defines what Arlington is and has become. I'm also going to say 66 and 395, because if we didn't have that, Arlington would be a much less pleasant place to be out and about on our bikes, because it keeps a lot of the traffic, pushed to those corridors. So I'm thankful for that.
It's interesting. Okay.
You want to try Randy again here?
Yeah.
Randy, we did hear you earlier. I don't know. We still don't have your sound.
Still nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to Steve Offit and then we'll come back.
Hi, my name is Steve Offit. I live near the courthouse neighborhood. Two quick things. One is I think I just lumped the whole sort of trail network together, like having the Custis Trail and the Capitol Crescent Trail and the Mount Vernon Trail and the WNOD and all of the trails we have. It's a really great network, and I can get to a lot of places. I would never bike up to Bethesda, for instance, if it weren't for the Capitol Crescent Trail, I don't think, or it would be a rare event. And then also coming back to the Capitol Bike Share, although I have not visited all the stations in the system, I did one day visit every station in Arlington, and I made a YouTube video of it called Cabby Quest Arlington, which I can share in the chat.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Steve.
So Randy, do you want to try again?
I think his Christmas present is going to be a new microphone.
Excellent.
We heard him earlier.
Okay.
Oh, I hear him. I thought we heard him. Maybe not.
All right. I think Tom
Corns.
next. Tom Corns.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say I've learned a lot from spending the last 10 or more years spending at least 2 months out of the year in a home at 100th Street and Central Park West in New York, in Manhattan. And they introduced me to something that is quite exciting and making a difference, and that is paint. That I saw Times Square change from a tangled home of traffic to a pedestrian, just a wonderful pedestrian place. And then very quickly, many other parts of New York City afterwards. For instance, when they used paint to change the name of the game, they didn't they didn't wait for years of engineering planning and the process of concrete and all that. They just went out and painted this, big spaces on the pavement for where cars were allowed and where they weren't. And in fact, I saw it really overnight. I mean, that happened very quickly. That happened within just 2 or 3 days. And a lot of concrete followed, but the thing was done. And now the same thing, I saw the same thing happen on my own street, Central Park West, where 50 blocks of Central Park West went from, I don't know how many hundreds of parking spaces to a bicycle lane alongside the park from the bottom to the top, and it too was done with paint overnight, and then what's followed is a lot more fancy concrete work and so forth that has secured it. But it, and I say this because a lot of the time, both in pedestrian advisory and so forth, going back decades, we could not get a single paint, drop of paint on the streets. It was always like, it's too expensive to remove if we get it wrong. And it went on for one project after another as a planning commissioner and as someone living here, that was a real impediment to both bicycles and pedestrians. And so it's amazing what's been accomplished, and to see it happen on in New York City on a overnight basis, and to be able, and it's happening on my own street, Stafford Street, and we have actually zigzagged the street with paint.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Yes,
much,
thanks.
Tom. Let's keep moving because we're already over time. And first of all, who have we missed anybody? Colin? Did Colin speak yet?
Yes,
Yes,
he
yes.
spoke.
Yes, okay.
Yes, he spoke early. But
Anyone
anybody else? Yeah, anybody
besides
else?
Randy?
Please raise your hand.
I guess, yeah, I actually hadn't spoken yet. But
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you're
okay.
good.
Two Collins.
Please.
Yeah.
Great.
But yeah, I guess things that I currently miss would be a circulator bus from Roslyn down to DuPont Circle. I took that a lot since I live in Roslyn. And then if things I would miss if they got taken away, I take the Mount Vernon Trail every day to get down to work in Alexandria from Roslyn. And I also take Capital Bike Share. So if either of those went away, that would not be great for me.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I think everybody else said hello except maybe Randy, who was not able to get on audio. So
Can anybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you?
Yeah.
Wow. I hate Teams with a passion. Okay. But I love the trails. That's the thing that I would miss the most. And I can't even figure out how to say thank you for the people who paved that little bridge down the hill from Brandymore Castle Historic Marker. The one on the Custis WNOD trail section there, and the bikes come down that hill really fast, so that the new pavement on the bridge really helps. Anyway, it's the trails that I would miss the most, because I go out of my way now, miles sometimes, to use trails instead of streets, because the streets make me so nervous. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Randy. And I do the same. So shall we dive into the first item on the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I can kind of take up the agenda a little bit from here.
Okay.
So this is Arlington's Transportation Future, which is the master plan update. And Mike Hanna and Pam Van Hine are going to give us an update on where things are and also engage us a little bit here.
Thank you, Eric. And Elwin, if you can pull up our first slide, please. Thank you. Magic. Okay. Again, I'm Pam Van Hine, and I am the PAC recording secretary. Mike and I will be giving this presentation. Mike is the BAC representative. I am the PAC representative on the Arlington's Transportation Future, which I am now calling ATF Advisory Group. And one of our duties is to give periodic updates to our group. So this is one of our periodic updates. Next slide, please. Owen, hello. Thank you. And everybody can see the screen okay, I hope.
Yes.
Briefly going to try to cover where we are on the project. What were the public engagements this fall? They did a ton of things in October. And I will ask you please to complete the online survey by November 15th and also comment on the map. And I'll talk about both of those a little bit when I get to that slide. And we're going to review the responses to our homework. I'll start with the PAC ones and then Mike will go over the BAC and talk about next steps. So next slide, please. My screen just went there. Okay. This was a slide I showed last time. I really like this slide because it shows how they were going from big picture and eventually getting down to specific strategies. So we start with the vision and goals, and then we get to policies and strategies that will get based on the visions and goals, and eventually we get to a guide for prioritizing improvements to Arlington streets based on safety, equity, accessibility, and other needs. And all of this will be integrated with other board adopted county plans. Stay tuned. Next slide. So this is where we are now. The group is still finishing up the visioning part of it. Uh, the questions that we were told to answer are part of visioning, and all of the public engagement they had are gathering data on visioning. Then everything closes in another couple weeks, and the staff will be compiling it, and then we can start moving on to priorities and eventually get to some detailed activities. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a summary of the different public engagement overviews that they had all in October, just an amazing amount of events, canvassing, pop-up events, public open houses. There's online tools. One of the things I want to mention is the listening sessions, and I want to give a shout out to Jim Feaster, who is on the BAC committee. He helped arrange a special listening session with the Jefferson, which is a senior living facility in Arlington. And that is a group of residents that the county has had a hard time reaching. So they had a wonderful session, and we may include some of their responses in our responses. And they're highly relevant to transit and Committee on Aging and Disability Advisory Commission too. Next slide. This is all the public engagement activities that they had. There were two huge open houses. The first one was fabulous. I went to it. All the transportation staff were there and had great discussions with people I've never met before. There were a bunch of pop-up events in different areas, much smaller, and they did canvassing events, and then they had these special activities. They had about 24 different events in 1 month. They reached over 1,000 people, I think, total. And go on to the next slide, please. Okay, we still have an online questionnaire. It is online until November 15th. You can find the basic website for the project. The shortcut is arlingtonva.us/transportation future. It'll take you right there, and then you have choices under that. And you can find out where this is. It'll take you 5 minutes to do the questionnaire, so please do it. I think we all hope that we get as many bike and pedestrian responses as possible for all of these surveys to really show the county how important bike ped facilities are and how dedicated we are. And next slide, please. Okay, this is a lot of fun. This is the interactive map, also open until November 15th. When you first click on the map, this is what you see. It's a mess. There's all these little discs and you can't do anything with them. What you need to do is first is find approximately where you want to place a comment and then expand the map as much as possible so you have some free space. And then it will take your Okay, it will take your comment. One of my disappointments in this map is it doesn't go by mode of travel, it goes by why you're going there. So there's one for shopping, there's one for dining, there's one for childcare. Uh, I don't really care why I'm doing it. I'm going to all these places for different reasons. So the other is the 3 dots. So there's lots of 3 dots ones here. But please do make comments, as many as you would like. I think I put about 6 in there already. And include in there how you're traveling, because I think that's really important. I'm not sure everybody's already doing that. So that please do both of those by November 15th. And now we're going to go over our questions. Next slide. All right, we both had all of these questions. You've seen them already, so we can go on to the next slide, which is the PAC answers to the first question, which is how does the PAC use the existing MTP? We are big users of all the MTP because we're very active on so many different things in the county involved with transportation. We sit on SPRT, SPRCs, capital budget, CIP. We respond to specific transportation projects, proposing legislation, working on sector plans. I use it for report a problem. If it's related to things that we should be doing, that's fine. And it gives us a better understanding of how county transportation policies and priorities are, what their thinking is. And related to it, that it is a reference when reviewing projects to make sure the projects are in line with the policies. And the last point, which I really want to stress, is not that we are just looking at the guidelines, but we want to know, are they really helping pedestrians? And I will say that the current pedestrian element often does not help pedestrians have the infrastructure that we need. A couple examples are, we cite a 6-foot minimum clear zone, and 6-foot minimum clear zone is not adequate for most commercial development these days. The ADA guidelines are quite a bit out of date. And you have to have a building that is 600 feet long before the guidelines recommend that you actually have a pedestrian passageway through that. In all this SPRCs I've sat on, I've had one building that I could apply that to. Everything else missed it by X number of feet. So next slide, please. Okay, this is the second question. And we had a lot of comments on this, so it goes on for 2 slides. What do we hope the refreshed transportation plan includes? The first priority is safety first, everyone, every time. Whether it's the MOT, however we're traveling, this all needs to be fixed, and it's not the highest priority right now. And for me, what I really hope we get out of this is a new model for sidewalk and bike lane development, because the current plan is not working both for how they're built and how they're maintained. So next slide, please. And other comments for question 2. One of the big issues for us, given that there are VDOT roads all over the place, is how do we implement our goals on VDOT-owned roads? It's a challenge. We would like a comprehensive look at all residential streets in a systematic way and compare them to Vision Zero style improvements. Again, the ADA and other guidelines need to be incorporated better and automatically, and they're not. Certainly, they're the ones in the current pedestrian element, which is almost 14 years old, are quite out of date. And we have comments on using technology and more. And that is especially important for aging pedestrians and pedestrians with disabilities, little kids, all the most vulnerable of us. There are ways that technology can be used to help us be safe and get where we need to go. and making sure that everything is evidence-based and has implementation actions and performance measures, which I think they plan on doing. Next slide, please. We're moving forward. This is 3. What are the challenges? And the first one summarizes everything, and no money, not enough staff, limited row, continuing car-centric culture, etc. And I am very concerned how this project will reach consensus on prioritization of competing needs. How do we balance the needs of drivers, of having nice green zones, wide sidewalks, protected bike lanes everywhere, great transit, etc. Reducing private car trips, of course. Political will at the local, state, and national level. Yes, this is a challenge, definitely. And building new roads that are more dangerous than existing conditions in conflict with Vision Zero guidelines. The prime example for me is having an at-grade Route 1 at 18th Street. It's perfectly safe, grade separated, and it is not perfectly safe when it's at grade. And this is cost of implementation of safety, conflicts with the business needs for access and pedestrian access, including cafe zones creep, which is one of my bugaboos. How do we balance all of this? Anyway, next slide. Continuing. There are many challenges that the county can't do anything about right now. We're stuck with the Dillon rule. VDOT controls certain roads. A lot of our buildings and land are federal, and they have their own issues. And the fire code keeps coming up. And when Mike and I were at the recent Barcroft meeting, a lot of the discussion was about the fire code and how that really restricts a lot of what you can do. So we need to fix that. Again, VDOT control of key roads, missing links sidewalks. Yes, we have lots of those. There's not currently a good way of fixing all of them, and it would be nice if we did. And there's still the ability for neighbors to block implementing them in some ways, and that we need to fix that. And Andrea gave this example. It impacts safe routes to school. Schools tend to be in neighborhoods, and a lot of our neighborhoods don't have a complete safe sidewalk network on both sides, and as a result, it makes it very hard to have safe routes for children to walk to school without changing your route and making it longer. Breaking up the super blocks, that would be nice, and we would really love to fix reporter problem. It doesn't always, it's hard to use, it doesn't always resolve anything, and it's not equitable. People who don't have computers aren't comfortable doing that. Don't use the reporter problem, they can't. Next, and we're getting close to the end. Next slide. All right, opportunities. As I mentioned before, it is an opportunity to create new guidelines and framework for sidewalk development and maintenance, commercial and residential. Right now, developers basically, with the county, work on plans for the sidewalk by their site. Okay, that doesn't necessarily match what's going on in the next block or the next several blocks. And residential, again, it's piecemeal. It's not really looking at the whole network. I want to look at the whole network and evaluate what the role of that particular sidewalk is and is it the right width. Again, ensure that all MOT plans provide safe, clear, easy to navigate routes, etc. And prioritize bike peds safe access over parking and keeping multimodal lanes open. And managing the conflict inherent in MOT plans between the need for businesses to have easy access and pedestrian safety is another one of these challenges we have to work out. Create new evidence-based metrics to evaluate all transportation projects. Yes, that sounds good. Next slide and our final slide. A lot of these are just kind of positive statements. The refreshed transportation plan should align with and incorporate the work of the Vision Zero program. The new Virginia Fire Code will support complete street designs that include sufficiently wide sidewalks and protected bike lanes. Well, we can dream. Reporter problem is replaced by a proactive, equitable, county-managed transportation condition surveillance and maintenance program that ensures everything is kept in good working order. I think it was a study in Seattle years ago, and it was about streetlights. And they had a system like Reporter Problem, and it was not equitable. And lights weren't fixed in a reasonable way. And they switched the program to, okay, the county is just responsible, or the city is actually responsible, and they have a systematic way of going through all the parts of the city and making sure lights are working, and it works. So I think we need to do something like that. Uh, and a developed network of connected green ribbons. The green ribbons are very exciting infrastructure in our neighborhood. We're trying to produce them at River House and other places. And it combines having lush greenery and trees with sidewalks and bike access. And if it's designed right, it could really help break up the super blocks and solve some of the conflicts we have, because we'll be sharing this space in a very reasonable way. And finally, advances in technology inform pedestrian infrastructure designed to ensure safety. Yes, especially for the most vulnerable. And that's all I have. I realized after I wrote that there's three more things that I may add. One is a map of pedestrian sidewalks, and so we can help to see where things need to be connected and how things are connected. It's in the bike element, it's in the street element, but we don't have anything like that in the pedestrian element. I think that would really help. And there's one other thing. Oh, I don't say anything about trails, and certainly I want to say something about trails. And I think I also want to say something about open streets. It really should be a county program to encourage open streets as much as possible. And that was not an option during COVID, and that was very disappointing. So that would be nice. That's all I have to say. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything right now, if we want to go on to Mike's comments and then have a little discussion. Your choice. Eric, you're on mute.
Let's go on to Mike's comments, and then we'll open it up for others to add.
Thank you.
Okay, so well, my first comment is Pam obviously doing an amazingly great job pushing this thing through and coming up with a lot of great insights. And I know it's not a competition, but BAC right now, the PAC is eating our lunch on this. So thank you to Cynthia and Randy, who did send me some comments. Everybody else, we really have about a week, and I really would like to get some more BAC input on our question, with same questions, but from a BAC rather than a PAC perspective. So go to the next slide. I did put together the ones we've got so far, and maybe this will prime the pump a little bit for folks. So first question is, how does the BAC use the existing MTP? Basically, the BAC primarily references the bike element to confirm policies and priorities. The next two are kind of the same, which is this is kind of what we use as a tool to remind staff of what we agreed to. And that's both in terms of general policies, but also specific prioritized projects when they don't seem to come up in the CIP or in redevelopment of certain roads. It's really useful to be able to point to the MTP as adopted policy. And then, also it could become a powerful tool for measuring and benchmarking. We did put metrics in there. And I know staff has been trying to assess the progress against those metrics, but I think we've been limited by data, good data to be able to really measure those things. Go to the next slide. So the second question was, what does the BAC hope the refreshed transportation plan includes? This first one, confirmation of critical bike network elements and routes. One of my biggest concerns is we put a lot of energy into the bike element in sort of planning out the future bike network and, connected network throughout the county. We need to make sure that gets into this future transportation plan, since the bike element is going to go away. More emphasis on reducing car travel, improve safety, reduce speeds, more emphasis on making active transportation modes safer. Basically trying to guide the community more towards a better mix of transportation options rather than depending too much on cars. And then some specifics, smaller, lighter vehicles, requiring trucks to use side underrail guards, and then intersections, and the way they're currently done. Right now we've got big buttons and we've got a very short lead pedestrian intervals. I always kind of joke that gives you just enough time to get out in front of the car before he turns right. So he can hit you right in center. So, the question is, can we set up intersections that really truly prioritize bikes and peds? And then the procedural issue. And I think I'm not sure how frustrated the PAC has been, but I know the BAC has been frustrated recently in that we're hearing about things sort of after the fact. Staff really isn't coming to us to get our input at the point in which planning and early project development we could make a difference. And we felt kind of sideswiped a few times by projects. So finding better ways to leverage all the expertise and passion on at least these two committees would be a big help. And that should somehow be built into the transportation plan. Next slide. So what does the BAC see as the biggest transportation challenges? So planning for transition to a more sustainable personal transportation. Once again, I do think there's a sense in some of the planning of, well, folks are mostly going to go by car, so we've got to make sure the roads are safe and convenient for cars, and then we'll figure out what else we can do with the right of way. Not quite as bad as it used to be, but it's still there. Once again, fixing intersections so they're less risky. And then, it becomes the old thing. I think it was Jillian used to raise the example of, if you're trying to decide a bridge, you don't look at the number of people that are swimming across the river at that place, right? You're not going to cross the river there until you build a bridge. Same thing with ped and bike infrastructure. People aren't going to do it if it feels unsafe. And so, it becomes a chicken and the egg issue. It needs to be safe for folks to use it and realize maybe they don't need to be in cars as much. Okay, go to the next slide. And then what are the opportunities for transportation? Planning for the transition, once again, envisioning a future with much less cars and much more active transportation modes, and improving the safety. And then, dedicating crossing times. And maybe that is having a purely pedestrian ped bike cycles on our traffic lights, lowering speeds, more bridges and more safe ways to cross, and then coming up with better metrics in how we're measuring things, and more details in that. So that's what we've got so far from the BAC. And I really do want to hear more from our committee. I know we've got a lot of really thoughtful folks who think about this stuff a lot. So this is our opportunity to really get in front of this planning effort. As I mentioned, I think some of us were rather proud of the bike element. I think we did a lot of good work there. And if we don't push really hard to get the better parts of that incorporated and maybe even improved upon in this effort, we may lose a lot of that. So pass it back off to you, Eric, if you want to.
All right. Well,
we have time for discussion.
Well, we are just on time, but we might be able to, I think we could probably spare about 10 minutes. What do you think, Cynthia? Up to that, and we could probably catch up towards the end of the meeting since we've done a little bit of business at the beginning. So why don't we open it up, and then we'll cut it off at just about 8 o'clock. But we'll look for some hands to be raised here. If folks have some ideas that they'd like to add, and then Mike and Pam, if you want to jot down some of these as they come in. So I I'm looking for raised hands. Anybody have any additional suggestions they'd like to move forward? Well,
I'll tell you what, if nobody else does, I'd like to jump on something Pam said right at the end there, talking
okay.
about a sidewalk map for the pedestrian committee. I think it's a great idea, and I think you guys need to think of a way to show quality of sidewalks. Whether that's width, whether that's obstructions, whether it's other things, because as a biker, I often have problems because of the spillover off of sidewalks, because there's just not enough room, so people are out in the bike lanes because they can't get around. So I think a pedestrian access map that has a lot of detail in terms of the good quality and the bad quality sidewalks would be a great idea.
That does sound good. Mary, are you out there? Is that something that we can potentially look into? I know we've heard from folks that say that people who walk like to use the comfort map, but is that something that the county might invest some time in the future?
I'm very interested in it personally, so I would have to ask. I can't make such a map myself, but if people who could make the map agreed that it was valuable, I'm all for it, sure. So that's my thinking. Yes.
All right, I see Pam has her hand up.
Yeah, maybe we need two maps. I was actually thinking of the pedestrian sidewalk map as more of a wish list where what we want to improve that really, and the example always is going to be the east side sidewalk for Crystal Drive, to really show on a map easily how important that sidewalk is and why it needs to be 10 feet wide and why it needs to be kept in good condition. Whereas, the sidewalk on a street that only goes for 2 blocks, it's not going to be nearly as important. But I don't think those kind of decisions are being made now when a developer puts sidewalk in front of his building. They just say, oh, well, the sector plan says it only has to be 6 feet or 8 feet, and that's what we're going to do. But there's other things that need to be considered. How it is used now and how it will be used in the future and why it's important. So on the other hand, having a current sidewalk map would be great too. And I thought some of the sidewalk conditions work was going to do that.
See, I know it was done, and I don't know because I remember someone spoke to the PAC about it a couple times.
Right, right.
And I don't know how hard it would be to actually access that and make a map of it, and then that would show where gaps exist.
Yeah. Right, right.
So that would be a question, I guess, for David.
Yeah.
Patton,
they have a
maybe.
ton of data.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot in the GIS. I see that Aaron has raised his hands first, so we'll go with Aaron and then Cynthia after that.
Hey, so I am on this advisory panel also. I'm on the Neighborhood Complete Street Commission representing the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and through that I'm on the advisory committee. So I'm a couple steps removed, and I'm still just trying to find my way in all of this stuff. But the one thing I was thinking about, if we are gonna get out of the siloing thing that the bike element, the pedestrian element does, we really have an opportunity to get that theoretical underpinning of all this and get the whole county responsible for this. So I would even go so far as to say we have to include policies like how many police officers we have in Arlington helping to maintain the transportation network in a safe way. And that needs to be written into this plan, because we don't control speed. We don't deal with the issues that we know are out there, and we try to build the streets the best way good behavior, but there's a lot of really bad behavior out there. We see it on, when we're out biking all the time. And I think, like the Safe Routes to School program and even like Live Where You Work programs, things that the county can and should do to help say, this is what we think transportation in Arlington in the future could look like 20 years, 30 years down the road. If we want it to be more electric, we can't say 10% of parking spaces in new construction should have electrical capacity. We should say that they need to build the electrical infrastructure so that 100% can be, and that it doesn't all have to be automobile-sized parking spaces. It needs to have opportunities for what we think transportation should look like in Arlington. And so I think there's just a chance to really expand that a lot more than maybe what we thought 20 years ago with the last MTP.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Yeah, so building on what Aaron is saying, I mean, yeah, it's sort of the question of how holistic we're going to be. I mean, my question is, to what extent is the focus going to be on intersections specifically, as those are where pedestrians and bicycle riders and others are being hit and sometimes killed or maimed? And so I mean, as a parent, certainly like in terms of safe routes to school and so on, my worry is, I mean, is primarily the intersections. Sidewalks are important. Sidewalks are great. A sidewalk map sounds good, but ultimately, an intersection map, like where are the danger zones? Where are my kids going to get hit? Most likely, that is the top priority for me, and I hope for the MTP, but I don't know.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. I see Ambar is his hand is up.
Yeah, just two quick things. I think to kind of follow up on what Aaron was saying, I would say not just kind of active sort of police officer enforcement, but also automated enforcement. And the second would be, I think we're probably noticing it now with the time change, but lighting. I think I don't know if there's something about that currently in the plans, but I think that's sort of adjacent, but that makes a big difference.
Thank you. Well, we have about is that Tom? Are you trying to raise your hand there? If you are, you're on mute right now.
There we go. Okay. Can you hear me?